Wait, folks, let's get started. Oh, this is what I say to my class. But yeah, I just finished a really intense teaching time. So again, thank you for having me at this workshop. It's a format that seems amazing. I don't think that we do enough of it. I feel like we pay lip service to it, but it's great to be with everyone. Hopefully, discussing more and more across these few days. So just a bit about myself. I'm Ananya Sen. I'm an associate professor at Carnegie Mellon at the Heinz College of Information Systems, Public Policy and Management. I'm a quantitative researcher. I'm trained as an economist. As I was saying over lunch, I don't necessarily identify as one anymore, but like I do stuff, related to the economics of media platforms and technology. Now, over the past sort of decade or so, bits of my, my dissertation, my postdoc years, and now I'm starting my 8th year as faculty. So, just to give you a sense, I've looked at media platforms and online platforms generally, and their sort of evolution over the past couple of decades. Looked at topics associated with media bias and ad revenue, and how when Craigslist came into the picture, media outlets started biasing their coverage in favor of their existing advertisers. Right? Craigslist took away classified ad revenue, stuff like that. That's legacy media and how they responded to online change. Since then, we've had democratization of content production through user-generated content. So I have some work on social media and political donations, and I'm still working on these, but quite a bit of the current focus is on generative AI and the information. Now, I took the text from Max's webpage of the conference webpage, and the goal of these lectures is to bring all participants on the same page, especially with regards to the relevant state of literature in other subjects. And there was a placeholder title which was Generative AI and Information Quality. So I was like, okay, let me just take that literally. But then what I started to do along with my great first year PhD student Stella Chen was to try and basically use this as an excuse to learn about what's happening in this space, right? Related to generative AI within the online information economy. There are papers coming out every single day. And so the list of papers, or the papers that I'm going to discuss are not exhaustive in any sort of way. It's not meant to be. It'll be too much. It might already be too much, or whatever is on the slides. But the whole hope is to just get more conversation going, right? And of course, I'll inject my own takes from time to time. Some takes might be more offline than online, given that this is being streamed. And it'll be hosted online. Okay, so I don't think I need to define terms, but just so that we're sort of all on the same page. Generative AI are deep learning systems. We've spoken about that over the past couple of sessions. What do I mean by the online information ecosystem? It's I took that generative AI and information quality placeholder title, and when I started thinking about information quality, I was like, I need to actually zoom out a little to make sense of how information has been impacted or is being impacted with generative AI being added as an additional layer. So information being created, shared, and consumed on the internet. Just based on my own lens and my own preferences, I'm going to linked to like political economy by thinking through news platforms. There'll be stuff related to, like antitrust and competition policy. When I talk about search platforms, so on and so forth. And again, feel free to just stop me, and we'll have a chat. As we started digging into into different papers, just trying to be up to date, right? Trying to bring some structure to our thoughts. We came up with this very simple sort of conceptual framework, which there are many ways to think about the literature currently. This is just one way that we thought, okay, let's try and organize our thoughts. By looking at this figure, you know that I'm not much of an economist anymore, because you would not find this in mainstream econ talk. But I'm going to go through each of these, and within each stage, I'm going to talk about a handful of papers. There'll be short summaries, but I'll hopefully those short summaries will maybe highlight some nice data set that you were not aware of, or some maybe open question, or conceptual issue that is not clear, and hopefully that'll serve the foundation for more conversation. So I'm going to talk about the production of content in the online information ecosystem using generative AI. Madhav's talk spoke about creative output a little bit. That particular slide I took out of the deck last night, so this is sort of complementary to what Madhav spoke about. Then I'm going to talk about distribution, and distribution will be focused on search platforms. So how is Google responding to the rise of generative AI in particular? I'm going to talk about very briefly one of my papers on AI overviews and how that's changing the landscape. And finally, talk about consumption. And within this, it'll be about the impact of consuming this content on beliefs and on action. There's not that much evidence on action, but there's a reasonable amount on beliefs. And these boxes are sort of connected. There are feedback loops. There are feedback loops because everything that you do goes back into training data, and some stuff that we already spoke about, but bits of that will hopefully come through. That makes sense, more or less? Okay. So when we think about generative AI and production of content, I just first started thinking about what do we really know at scale, right? And the paper that I came across was actually, I think it was released like last week, maybe, about the extent of AI-generated text on the internet. And what these authors did was that this is in collaboration with the Internet Archive folks. So I think two of the folks are from Internet Archive, and then there are students from Imperial College and from Stanford. What these folks do is the following. They look at samples of websites from the Wayback Machine, right? And they have monthly intervals, and they basically try and detect what text might be AI generated or AI assisted. As Madhav had mentioned, that this tool by Pangrams is reasonably good right now, at least, at detecting what is AI generated versus not. And then there was also some conversation about how short a sentence does it need to be, or does it need to be a longer piece of text. So they sample web pages that had at least 100 words, right? So just to get a sense.
Does Typegraph take into account the date of creation, given that these models changed?
Date of creation.
Like if they classify text from 22, it would look different than classify 25.
Oh, so I think they just use the same algorithm and they use it and they just take the text, use the same algorithm and just try, and they basically find this sort of upward trend, which is them saying that, look, AI generated or AI assisted text wasn't that much when you talk about 2022, early 2022, and it's been going up. So I think the sort of number that's sort of doing the rounds is this 35% of newly published websites are classified as AI generated or AI assisted. That that's this number here. So right at the end. One caveat is that this is as I mentioned, this is a new paper and there aren't as many details in the paper. I in fact got in touch with the authors and they said that they're going to release the data and the methodology and everything soon. They're just trying to get clearance from the Internet Archive folk. So semantic similarity is that basically, so the semantic similarity is basically two sentences that might look different but sort of mean the same thing, and they find that across this time, this time series, the similarity is increasing across websites.
Just two random websites?
Yes, or no, within websites. I think
they become more redundant.
They become more. They seem to be regurgitating more. That's my sense. But this sort of comes with the caveat that they do a lot in this paper. There are 3 or 4 sort of human surveys, experiments as well. So all of that is within like a 10-pager that they have. So there's no evidence of decreased factual accuracy. Again, I would this seems like an encouraging result, right? To the extent that we care about the quality of information, and this is one way that we could get at it. But how do we measure it? How reliable are those measures? As we discussed, is kind of unclear. Now, this is at a high level. Bit by bit, I'm going to go slightly deeper, and I want to talk about a similar exercise about the use of AI tools, but for news production, right? And here they basically audit thousands of articles in the summer of 2025 using the same AI detector, Pangram, right? And they found that about 9% of recent news articles were AI generated or AI assisted. This, the title is AI use in American newspapers is widespread, uneven, and rarely disclosed. I don't know if I would call 9%, widespread. That's kind of subjective. To the extent that they find that it's smaller local outlets and topics like weather, sports, tech, and tech and health. Some of this was already happening before, right? So like the Associated Press had used to do they used to call it robo journalism, where there's a set template and you get these like financial reports and then you just populate it, or if it's like a local sports game. Yeah.
So I talk about AI generated. Sorry, I don't know exactly how does it work. my practice when I write something originally myself, so that's mine. But then I want to make it like smooth or tutorial changes, and I use like Grammarly, and then from there on, that is recognized as AI generated. So here, what is the concern? Is it like that? Maybe everybody, like all this 10% use it for editing,
Right.
or is it like the actual content? Is the content just summary of everything out there as LLM generated, or is it just LLM edited? Or do these like toolbox actually differentiate?
So I'm sure Madhav can answer this better.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but I think there are two parts to your question. One is like, how does it differentiate, and does it differentiate properly? And the second is, so what? Right? Right. And I'm coming to the so what, which is like, are we not going to use these tools, especially, for editing? We were already using Grammarly. I think my writing style was already tailored to Grammarly suggesting edits and errors. I'm going to come to that bit by bit, for sure. But
so they try to distinguish between these with the AI generated versus AI assisted labels. But the answer is, if the final pass rewrite is done by AI, it'll come up as either AI generated or AI assisted, even if the ideas are used as well.
I guess the so what last item, presumably.
sorry.
It's the last item is pretty big on the so what, right?
Yes. So more error prone, 41% contain hallucinated or false claims. This is where, it starts sort of kicking in. I'm going to talk about, misinformation and all of that. That said, again, this was to inform whatever random prior I had. And this is 41% of a reasonably small base, right? So like it's 9% of all articles, then 41% within that. So at least my subjective sort of thoughts is that this didn't bother me as much, at least right now. But again, we're right at the beginning. That's my sense. Yeah.
Maybe just out of curiosity, do they also provide like time trends for this 3-year period? Because my guess is that if it's 9% on average, then right now it's going to be much more than 9%, right? And probably the hallucination rate is going to be lower.
Oh, right. So hallucination is lower.
I mean, just in terms of model performance,
Right.
Using so much that.
I think there were basically aggregates. If I remember correctly, there was a reasonable amount of heterogeneity across different types of outlets based on ownership, based on local versus mainstream. Then there was also manual audits of AI flagged articles where they found that that people, authors don't disclose AI use at all. And some of these manual audits were also done for opinion articles of like the Washington Post and New York Times, and they found certain cases of AI not being disclosed.
It's another point here is bank where presumably there's a conflict of interest here a little bit that they want to sell a product.
I am very happy to have that conversation now, down the road, offline, whatever. But I think in general, the interaction of academia with tech industry right now is at a problematic point. It's we were talking about like funding issues over lunch. Funding has gone down. You lean on tech companies, but tech companies have their own sort of interests. I think in some sense that was going to be one of my pleas to this crowd, which is that let's make sure that we do this in an independent sort of way, because as I've grown up as an academic, there are things that are funding, etc. That's it's not ideal far from ideal. And maybe we don't put this talk online. Like, or like not archive it. Right now it's fine.
Think about being a newspaper. And what I mean by that is like, suppose my local newspaper publishes like a physical thing, but then they also have a website. And the website is 50% AI generated
Mhm,
because they want to sort of fill it out
mhm.
on the topics that they don't really cover. That seems like it could generate this pattern, but then the counterfactual is that those articles are just never there.
Yeah, so I think some of these questions are related to, okay, so how do we think about, the so what? What are the welfare sort of consequences? Do I have? Yeah, I have something here, right? So why I think that this is, a nice sort of starting point is it's a nice descriptive exercise. It gives us a sense of what is happening. If I take, if I think of higher quantity and limited attention and people engaging with this content, then it can potentially crowd out other stuff. But it might be the case that no one is consuming this stuff anyway, and then it doesn't matter, right? So right now, this is just, the production phase in isolation. We'll slowly sort of build towards, how it might start mattering. But on its own, I would think that, we saw from Homa's presentation that what 10-12% of people in general consume the news, right, online. And they obviously don't consume everything, right? So if it's just like stuff to fill the page, no, going to get a few views and it won't matter.
This is also mostly text, right? I think AI generation becomes a bigger problem when we think of images and social media, like your good morning posts being generated.
Right.
I don't know if that's a problem.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we had a conversation about good morning posts, and good morning posts are a very apparently an Indian social media thing where older Indian, uncles and aunties and parents, just send out post good morning. Based on like Homa's talk, it's like, is that necessarily a bad thing? It's like it might reduce toxicity and polarization and stuff like that. But to your, more substantive point, it's like, for sure, like, I think image generation, synthetic image generation has become much more realistic, right? And news articles are not only text, but it's a combination. This is something that I'll talk about in my talk on Wednesday, right? But that is an absolutely fair point.
Yeah, I feel like there's a somewhat bigger ecosystem context for the two, right? When users have less and less money because the ad revenue shifted to platforms, and that's the same reason you can pay journalists less and substitute them with LLMs.
Yes. So great point. Also because I have a paper on it. But I'm going to talk about that in the distribution part, right? This is just trying to get a sense of how are these tools being used. And again, it's like, we had this sort of conversation about, quality or like undercurrents of this conversation in Madhav's talk as well, right? I want to be, I want to be grounded in thinking about quality, because we also had a lot of these conversations when, user generated content was coming onto online platforms. Everyone thought that, this is just, complete rubbish. But now, like, Reddit and Wikipedia, they are like the high quality content that's being fed into LLMs, right? And, there is evidence that people who contribute to Wikipedia are doing pretty well. They do a pretty good job. I have some other work about user generated content and professional content on local news. They seem to be doing reasonably well. So that's just a general sort of
Also, it's a very different moderation structure from a TikTok feed.
sorry.
it's a very different selection and moderation structure from a TikTok feed.
Yes. Yeah. Contrary to what people might think, it's like Wikipedia is heavily, heavily edited. There's a, proper sort of editorial structure in there, not for TikTok, I would assume, or like as we just discussed. Let me be, I'm keeping track of time as well. One sort of downstream consequence of being able to generate content at scale could be, hyper personalization, right? Now, if you think of it from just the platform's perspective or the firm's perspective, maybe hyper personalization might be revenue maximizing. It's just that we don't really know. I have, with my co-authors at Carnegie Mellon, we tried to do, an audit type of study for the 2024 elections, where we set up, bots, and we signed up to different campaign mailing lists of different Senate races, House races, presidential races, and we didn't really, we were in some sense hoping to find, personalization based on the names that we provided or the location. We didn't really find anything, right? There were only a handful of Senate candidates who did personalize a little bit, but it wasn't there. Which, again, it's possible, right? Hyper personalization is possible, but what are the returns to hyper personalization? There's not much there as far as I know.
Maybe heard, at least what I read, right, is that a lot of the personalization that's been happening in campaigning is more on the target for the person contact, which is the costly thing. So it's not really modifying the content, it's modifying like whose vote do you try to get out, basically.
Right. No, I see that. So that's one type of personalization, right? But technically, maybe earlier the bottleneck was that there's a reasonably high fixed cost to personalize to different types of people, and that has sort of reduced drastically with such content production. I haven't seen any papers in a credible way that would talk to the demand for it or the returns from it. Personalization, sure. In general, we've seen, from the firm's perspective, we've seen that it can potentially be beneficial. Yeah. So I have a slide on misinformation because I couldn't help myself. But I'm going to talk about misinformation quite a bit more on Wednesday. But going back to the point that I think Homa was making, there is this sort of conversation, not only media versus academics, but also within this broader media misinformation community, where there's disagreement about the extent to which misinformation is a problem, as well as online sources are contributing to that. But to Arushi's point, this is the paper that I'm going to present on Wednesday with Felipe, Ruben, and Felix. Definite increase in the quality of synthetic content. The focus is on images, right? That seems to be a big change. Text, you can again, you can also potentially hyper personalize text, which you couldn't. And this nice paper actually, they developed a news app to hyper personalize news stories to experimental subjects within their study. But you could think that a similar app could be deployed in production to people in general, right? Where you take the same story, but you sort of, slant it one way or make it, slightly more entertaining, slightly more factual. That's what they do in their study. Do I have okay? So, spend about half an hour just talking about the production of content. I don't have a summary slide. I should have, but I was working on the slides till Madhav was and Oma were talking. Again, the whole point of this bit was, let's just see what's happening. It opens up questions about welfare, of course, but that's where, if we dive into the distribution part and the consumption part, maybe we'll be able to fill in those blanks. But just to say that there are papers that simply look at the production of AI generated content, AI assisted content, in the same way we were talking about, okay, is there something to be written or improved upon about just identifying sort of misinformation properly, right? That would be a contribution on its own. But that would, yes.
You might be talking more about it. Talk anyway. It's this in a way like the old Hannah Arendt point about the I don't know how totalitarianism works, by not making people believe certain things, but rather by them not believing anything, because everything could be fake.
Right. So
that's a means of control.
That's like in some sense, flooding the zone. And that's a fair point. And in fact, that's why I have this misinformation slide here, because it speaks to that. The reason why I don't want to go into too much detail is because I'm going to spend an hour and a half, and there we can have broader conversations, because that paper has one field experiment, but there are it raises many open questions, including different strategies. And just FYI, this will come up in the distribution part as well. Okay, so let me talk about how such content might diffuse, right? Whether it's LLM generated content or content created by human experts. I want to try and understand how the distribution of such content changes with the advent of such generative AI tools. And I'm first going to talk about Google search and AI overviews. Then, there's this, I'm going to talk about how news outlets are opting out of being crawled by the ChatGPT bot. I forget what it's called. But so I'm going to focus on two and a half sort of studies. The first one will be related to this relationship between news publishers and search engines, or just like distribution platforms online more generally. Pre sort of AI overviews or pre-generative AI being available at scale, news outlets and search platforms had a symbiotic relationship, right? So this is Google News that's hosting that's hosting various different news outlets. It would be similar if you search for something like this on the search page itself. Now, there is quite a bit of tension currently between Google and news publishers, but this tension actually predates the generative AI era. There have been multiple disputes, regulatory interventions about like shutdown of Google News in Spain, opt-outs in Germany, so on and so forth. In that sort of time period, at least the results And the caveat is that some of these results are sort of short term. Is that these online search platforms are kind of complements to news publishers, which is
Really in the short term, but in the long term, there has been a massive shift of ad revenue from one sector to the other.
yeah. So that's why I say, what the evidence says comes with the caveat that it's mostly short-term complementarities. You can imagine that in the longer term, people find their way to the news websites themselves, right? And just are not simply sort of satisfied by whatever snippet that they see. I feel that these snippets used to be bigger earlier. This is just a screenshot from yesterday. To your maybe broader point about ad revenue shifting, I think that's also a general sort of online phenomena where the right up front I'd mentioned Craigslist, right? So it's basically that earlier a lot of local news outlets used to be pretty, they used to make a reasonable amount of money, and that was because they used to sell a lot of classified ads, right? So there's the main main newspaper, but then you have all these ads. People buy it because you're getting access to that classified information. All of that has gone online, which has taken away a lot of revenue. Then on top of that, there are platforms such as Google, Facebook, etc., which maybe capture a reasonable amount of traffic before anyone reaches the downstream platform. I think part of the short-term nature of these people is that you try to argue something too long-term, and then you lose the reviewers in terms of pinning down causality, right? So this is how it was pre AI overviews, and this is what I'm going to present over the next 10 minutes or so is about AI overviews, and this is joint work with Saharsh Agarwal, who's faculty at the Indian School of Business. Now, I think what's potentially happening with AI overviews, going to Max's point, is that earlier you had a snippet, right? People are interested, they might click on it, you might lose some traffic in the middle. With AI overviews, the problem is that the search platform is using data from the links that it hosts, aggregates that data, provides you all the information such that you might not even click through, right? And this has led to massive massive policy issues here in the UK with the CMA. There's something. There are concerns related to the US Sherman Act about Google abusing its monopoly power, and many such lawsuits. So at the heart of these conversations is this issue that with these AI overviews, Google might be stealing traffic. Google sometimes argues that the downstream traffic that they are getting as a result of them providing these AI overviews is just higher quality traffic, right? It's like people who are actually interested. So we try to get at this question, and again, taking half a step back, making sure that we don't forget the big picture. This is about new revenue to news publishers that sustain the broader information ecosystem. So what do? We have a field experiment with 1,000 people that we that we recruited off of Prolific. Now, this is not a survey experiment. This is a field experiment in that we recruit them off of Prolific, but we developed our own custom browser extension, Chrome extension, which can modify people's browsing behavior in real time. So, this is not the latest set of slides. Okay, that's okay. And what exactly do we do? Because there's also a third group here. We recruit these people for a couple of weeks, right? They install our browser extension, and then just going about their days, right? No interaction with us at all. In the control group, we have the status quo, where if you search for something, you'll see an AI overview if it was meant to be triggered. In the treatment group, because of our browser extension, we can, in real time, with minimal fuss, remove the AI overviews. We have a third group where we basically allocate about 25% of the users to the AI mode, which is the search interface, which is powered by Gemini, akin to ChatGPT, right? So if they search for anything, they just get routed to the AI mode. There's substantially more attrition there, of course, because we didn't really tell them what we were doing. But so that's more descriptive. What this allows us to do is that it allows us to track URL visits, clicks. We're still working on scrolls. We have endline surveys. We have some engagement on downstream websites. So this is what, it's like, if you type in largest ocean in the world, this would be the control group where you have this AI overview. If you're in the treatment group and you type the same thing, what this basically does is that it removes the AI overview in real time and everything else just shifts up. That's all that we are doing. And okay, I have this slide here. That's good. And in the AI mode, if you type in your search bar or wherever about the largest ocean in the world, we'll redirect you to the AI mode. And this is what you'll see. Yeah.
One thing I've never understood with this is why is Google doing this, in the sense that the AI mode is going to reduce exposure to ads, right? Because before there used to be Google something and see ads. Now, like, there's another extra step to visiting the web pages where there might be ads, and that's how Google makes it.
So I think they're in the process of injecting ads into all of this, into AI mode.
Into the generated content.
Yeah. So I think they're moving from SEO to GEO. So which is like search engine optimization to like generative engine optimization or something like that. Or at least, they had their I/O day like a couple of days ago. So I think they were talking a lot about this, but that's, and I mean, ChatGPT is also experimenting with like, sponsored content or sponsored listings. To be honest, they just have to, because otherwise I don't think they're going to survive really. So I'm going to mostly talk about what happens here versus here, right?
Do you know if they're like required to like mark off that what ad content versus not?
So I think my sense is that this is going to be the same story that we saw with like general search, is that initially they might not label it properly, then there'll be backlash, and then it'll become slightly more prominent. I think I don't make too many predictions, but this is kind of like in your face. Yeah.
There's no like clear legal precedent.
No, not yet. And I don't think that they themselves know. because there is that part of user trust, right? When they're looking at such content interfaces. So I'm going to go through a couple of results very quickly, and also because it's a reasonably simple paper to understand. But the whole point of writing this was that there is a lot of regulatory discussion around this, and we're a neutral third party. Results can go whichever way. We don't represent news outlets. We don't represent Google. We might be getting things wrong. That's fine if I think Google has the data, so they can correct us if they want. So what do we find? Relative to the control group, if you're in in the hide AI overview group, that is, you don't see the AI overview, the number of clicks on the number of organic external clicks increases relative to in a case where you have AI overviews, right? Relative to the control group where you actually see
Clicks on websites or ads?
sorry,
Clicks on the website or an ad?
these are organic clicks. So just directly on the website. We don't find any difference on sponsored clicks at all. Though the caveat is that those are smaller in number, so they are slightly noisier estimates. The probability of a 0-click session is significantly lower if you don't see the AI overview, right?
I'm wondering how fair of a comparison is this in terms of the amount of information being displayed from a snippet about a website versus the AI snippet seems quite different, right? As in, if you replace the AI snippet, with like a one-line summary made to look exactly like the website, I would guess that people might just click on the AI summary instead of the website.
So if I understand correctly, I mean, this is again, I think this is about how should we think about the counterfactual, right? It's like,
right, yes.
And that's a fair point. I think what we are basically trying to do is trying to take what's happening right now, and we don't have, let's say, the counterfactual ranking if AI overviews never existed, right? We're just taking it out of the equation and replacing it with maybe the older version of Google search. I think, please expand on your.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm making sense, but I'm more thinking that of the converse almost, sort of, if you start with the hide AIO, and now you're adding the AI summary, right? Going from red to blue.
Right.
You're reducing the number of external clicks. But I'm wondering about the counterfactual where instead of adding the AI summary, you're just adding a bigger window that shows a bigger snippet from a given website. And my guess is that it might similarly reduce the amount of clicks just because there's more to be seen.
Potentially. And in some sense, AI overview has been it's the culmination of a series of steps where there were, some sort of summaries that used to be around. We just didn't know how to create that counterfactual, to be honest. What I know is that, or what I know based on what we've read about Google, about search and the AI overviews, that they're basically separate algorithms, and that there is a lot of overlap between the links that you see in the AI overviews and the search page, right? Like 94% of links in the AI overviews are represented in the top 10 or 15. But your question about, it is in some sense about changing the intensity of the AI overview itself, right? Which we've seen, we just, we wanted to do.
It's actually surprising that there's 94% overlap with just separate.
Yeah, but the thing is that the AI overview has to be constructed out of something, right? So
It's not using the search though when it does.
sorry?
It's not using the search when it does. Like I would have thought that AI overview basically runs a Google search and then creates a summary of this website or something like that.
But yes, so okay, maybe let me rephrase. My understanding is that the search algorithm is unaffected by the AI, that they are not completely independent. Like the AI overview algorithm would draw on. That is my understanding. Yeah, that's a more refined state. Yes.
The
AI mode.
yes, because one is like really like Google will show AI over.
Hmm.
But what was the other one? AI mode?
So AI mode is, I think, in a couple of years, will bit by bit become the default. This is the sort of search interface which is powered by Gemini, and here it's basically like a chatbot, right?
There's no link.
I mean, there are links. Yeah, they are not like ranked sort of links like this. So there is a lot of attrition in that arm, just because people are like, why on earth are we being redirected here? But we have some interesting results here too. But I don't want to make this a frontier talk. I want to keep this tutorial.
So isn't that good progress? I mean, that's the point of AI mode, right? So you have the AI mode, so you don't need to click on a lot of links to find it out yourself, right? AI did it for you, right?
But the question is, the clicks are going to downstream websites that are literally the source of this information. So if you keep people here, people are not. There's a reduction in traffic by quite a bit to downstream websites. So then it creates sort of perverse incentives for downstream news publishers. Like how will they get traffic? How will they get ad revenue? What will they say in their quarterly earnings? So I think that's the tension. But to your point, if I can just, we also had an endline survey where we asked users about just their satisfaction, right? It was like no difference at all. So to answer your question, more broadly, and these are just 2 questions. We have 2 or 3 others as well. They reduce downstream publisher traffic, but users don't seem to, at least in their stated sort of responses, don't seem to care that much.
Which month was this study?
This is January and February of 26.
Okay.
Then about 40% of queries had AI overviews.
So I'm pretty sure if you do it now,
right,
then you will be better. Already user satisfaction is going up. It's getting crazy this year. I don't know whether, you are from CMU. I assume you know that it's getting really crazy with Claude and all that this year. So it's like every week, we're talking about every week, there is a new upgrade.
Right.
So it's exponentially accelerated this year. I'm not talking about last year, this year. So
but it's like
very different. So if you do the study now, I think I bet, right? I bet the high AIO, that column is going up.
The endline survey was towards was after the 2 weeks, the 2-week period.
Yeah.
So we're talking about like mid-Feb to early March 2026.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's that's why I wanted to do this exercise of just looking at the literature, because it seems like 2 months ago, and I understand that 2 months is a long time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gemini 3.5 Pro is coming up very soon. And if we run this, I'm pretty sure using Gemini 3.5.
If I can get funded, I would love it, because this costs quite a bit. Because just to have 1,000 people over a period of 2 weeks to install a browser extension and then just let them be is expensive. Yeah, sorry, there was a question.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think the right economic analogy is actually with capital expropriation. That is that someone spent some money to put this information on the website. The Google search is essentially using that,
Mm-hmm.
but taking the future rents from the already built capital.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, capital expropriation is complicated because it doesn't directly change the incentive to produce new content, provided you can prevent it from being expropriated. Right, so like the fact of which ocean is the largest is something that someone put on the web. Now that has been effectively stolen from them by Google.
Mm-hmm.
But if there are new and different facts that need to be put on the web, if they can prevent those from being stolen by Google, then the fact that Google stole the old stuff doesn't really matter. So I think that the story is more complicated than the one that you're describing, where it like directly reduces publisher revenue. Like that's true, but it isn't necessarily the right welfare frame.
I mean, I'm happy to chat more offline because there are at least legally there are different ways in which people are suing Google.
Sure.
Right? So
but they sue Google because Google has money. Sometimes they also have a case.
yeah, but there's also sue Google because of this. I mean,
well, but like the fact that the Pacific Ocean is the largest ocean is
No,
not a subject of a copyright, right?
Sure, but that's an example.
Well, but I think that's a very good example, right? It's like that kind of thing used to accrue revenue, probably not to Noah,
Right.
wasn't monetizing it very
Right.
well, but that kind of thing used to accrue revenue to someone.
But
Now it's accruing revenue to Google.
so I don't have that result here, but we find the treatment effects to be similar across different types of information subject, including the news. So, I mean, if it's sure, this is a bundle of stuff, but I think what you're talking about, in terms of like capital appropriation, I guess, and the incentive to produce new information would apply to the news for sure. Right?
Incentives can you opt out?
Well, no, yeah, I mean,
So-
the key question is, for the new information that you produce, can you prevent Google from AI overload?
So right now there is no such provision. That is in fact opt-outs is, I don't know if I have it here. So the CMA, I think, has recommended an option to opt out for news publishers, for example. That's still not, it's still not,
And then you get penalized in search or
that again, it's like it's unclear, and it's I don't know. The answer is I don't know, but this is again the aim is to just get the conversation started with some numbers. We have treatment effects, slightly noisier because we're talking about different subgroups for news publishers as well. One other point is that, often, Google has made the claim that that the clicks that are going downstream are of higher sort of quality. We don't have a good, we can measure engagement on the downstream page. We don't find any difference across these different groups. This is, conditional on click, so there is selection here. We've got some controls in there, but as a first pass, we don't really see much. But again, the caveat is that we're getting into small sample contexts and stuff like that. Anyway, so this is all I have on this bit, but this was just to introduce the sort of complications that we're talking about, distribution of information as generative AI has come into the picture. I want to talk about one more thing, which is about, blocking behavior by news outlets. And so it's based on this paper by Kai Su, who is at Bocconi. Again, in the interest of interdisciplinary scholarship, he's an information systems PhD and now a professor of marketing at Bocconi. No, yes. We were talking about opting out of AI overviews. Now I'm talking about just the ability to block AI crawlers from crawling your website. And what Kai basically does is that he analyzes, about 10,000 media and news outlets and looks at the robots.txt files to look at what are news outlets doing when it comes to blocking crawlers. So robots.txt, for people who don't know, it's basically a set of sort of instructions, preventing crawlers from crawling. Now, this is a norm-based thing. It's like, crawlers don't need to abide by this. But, in general, the rule of the internet is that, you abide by these robots.txt files. And what he finds is that, GPT bot, which is OpenAI's crawler, is blocked the highest number of times. And then, there's Cloud bot, now Google extended bot, etc. Right? So when we're talking about, information that comes up in, on LLMs or might feed into training data, this potentially creates adverse selection in the AI data commons.
So what's the difference between the different bots from the same firm? Like, why is there like a cloud bot and an Anthropic bot?
Not sure. Yeah,
You have to block them by name.
Exactly.
Well, some of them are for indexing for pre-training and some of them for real-time search, right?
Right. And there was that, it's relatively high for the blocking is relatively high for training relative to search. And I think who is blocking? It's high quality media websites are blocking at a much higher rate than not so high quality ones. When did they start blocking? As soon as GPT bot, which is Chat GPT's thing, was introduced, right? So this is pre versus post, high versus low quality, right? So this is basically trying to say that earlier I was talking about, the use of information by Google search itself in its new AI product. Their, news outlets, they're in a bit of a tricky situation. They're talking about policy things such as opting out. Here, this is, one of the explicit ways in which they can control, who comes on, who scrapes what, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Is the right story here adverse selection, or is it that the high quality sources are just striking external deals and monetizing? So they block the default scraper and they sell their data in bulk and they're able to extract the premium from it.
So I think the adverse selection framing is slightly forward looking, right? As far as I know, the New York Times is still in litigation, for example.
Right, but like AP has a deal with OpenAI, they're getting like $5 million.
Is that true? It's like, yeah.
Publishers who basically struck licensing deals with the big outlets. So part of the story might at least be that, like, yes, we're going to shut down your sort of scraping access to it, but instead we'll just go around the back and sell it.
Right. And I think, that's, whether it's 5 million a year or something more is part of this question about, about copyright and, how you interpret these things. I know that, like, for example, Reddit, it's not a news outlet, but Reddit struck a deal as well, right? That was like 60 million or something like that. So I think maybe it's part of that process that they are, just trying to, this is the most credible signal that they have of like, look, we don't like this, and I'm going to take you to court, but we can strike a deal. So it might not pan out. And this is, that's why the title of the talk is also like early evidence or current evidence.
Or maybe it does pan out in the sense that you were worried that people aren't getting the downstream traffic, and maybe the model shifts from, well, we don't need the downstream traffic if we're just going to upfront sell the data to it.
Yes, yeah, that's fair. If it compensates enough for the downstream traffic potential, and yeah, and the AP is also like a newswire, right? So it's like that percolates even more. So that might be something interesting to study. I think I missed that. Yeah, so that's a fair point.
When they block this stuff, how does it work for the paywall sites? So like, is the Wall Street Journal blocking the snippet, or are they blocking the whole article? Because like I would want to sell the snippet, I would want it to crawl the snippet so that it could get people to my paywall.
Yeah, that's a good question. In fact, one doctoral student at CMU was presenting something similar for his first year paper. And I think if you are, and I had a similar question to him, like if you are paywalling, then you are blocking almost by default. So maybe they get the snippet, I'm not sure, but that's a fair point, right? It's like,
I think you want to.
yeah, it's like you want to get the snippet, which might drive traffic, right?
Where is the robots.txt in like website structure? Like, can I have a snippet page that is not covered by it and a different page that is?
Potentially, I'm not sure. Madhav, do you know?
Oh, sorry, my name is Manish, but
Manish, sorry.
No worries.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Not sure. Yeah. Okay, so one final slide on this, and then I'll go to the final bit, which is still kind of there's sparse evidence, but I think Max, you were talking about in the first part. I think you were talking something related to this. Now we are in this distribution stage, right? How does it reach the consumers? What goes back into the training data? What is pretty clear based on this paper, which has again come out like 10 days ago, is that their strategic players have realized that they can sort of try and at least game the system, right? So what this paper in Nature finds is that LLMs exhibit a stronger pro-government stance in languages of countries with lower media. And then they focus on a case study in China where media is scripted and curated by Chinese state, which appears much more in LLM training data set. So if you look at the same sort of query in Chinese relative to English, the Chinese output will be much more positive about leaders and institutions and stuff like that. So we have that whole tussle between between downstream publishers and search engines and LLMs, in part because smart players realize that the underlying sort of training data, the information that is being dispersed, can be manipulated or can be changed.
I don't know much about the news media. Said they will game the system, like they try to, because if all the media is controlled for the government, what is available is pro government. So the government doesn't need to do anything. It's already, the training data is already for government. Or is it that like the government is trying to provide more on top of what is there?
Yeah, so great question. My understanding is that there's the existing corpus, and then there would be updates, right? So it would you know, when I was going through this paper, I think they said that, you know, it would provide incentive for governments to have further control of media outlets, media sources, right? The sort of pre-LLM analog is that at least I think in the case of Russia, I was talking to Andrei Simonov, who's a marketing scholar at Columbia Business School, and he was talking about how, and he's worked on like Russian media propaganda and stuff like that. And this is now years ago. I don't think he ever wrote that paper, but he was talking about how whenever there's like sort of big breaking news or big event, Russian media tries to really sort of flood the zone so that they get high up in like Google search rankings and stuff like that, right? So this strategy is there. Maybe this is the LLM analog to, you know, that's my sense. But again, early evidence, and this is just like.
But that's, I guess it's a little bit different from what I was trying to say before. Like there's like a control, I guess that requires a great deal of control to actually like be able to filter what information people see, right? And make sure that it's all positive about the Chinese government or whatever, as opposed to what I understand, I guess, both a lot of like, say, Putin's propaganda strategy abroad being, or some part of the Trumpian strategy, which is just throws out a lot of random and contradictory and stuff, which just generally like increases the toxicity and polarization and decreases people's beliefs in factuality of news and so on.
Right.
Which is a less direct way of control, but potentially more effective. And where like AI is
potentially easier.
I mean, yeah, where AI is not in some sense really comes.
It's just very normal compliance policy in China. So there's nothing particular here. So if you want to publish in China, Chinese, you got to follow the compliance policy there, right?
Right.
So each country has different compliance policy, right? It has nothing to do with AI actually, but whatever if you want to publish, okay? So different country has different policy. And also China is very different from Russia. Even if they have good relationship, China is not losing a war to anyone.
Right.
That's very different. And China is economically much stronger than
Right.
Russia. It's many times the amount of GDP of Russia.
Right.
So Russia's GDP is now only one province of China's. China has 30 provinces. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what to try and put this remark into context, I think they have a case study on China, but then they have this sort of cross-sectional, cross-national sort of study, analysis where they show that, this effect is kind of generalizable, at least,
Yeah, that looks normal to me because basically the Chinese text
Right.
generated based on Chinese policy.
Right, but
So of course that's different compared to the English text.
Right.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But I think, and happy to also take this offline, is that, I guess, this maybe highlights the fact that there is potential for, strategic, intervention, and that I think that's basically, yeah. But, and then Max, to your previous point, it's like, yes, the two are sort of different strategies. How effective each one is, I don't know. My initial thought seems to be that, maybe that flooding the zone with contradictory stuff might be more in their control and more direct than, trying to control media such that it feeds into the algorithm such that, but yeah, this is, speculation. Okay. Let me go to, we have 15 minutes left, and, let me go to the final bit about, consumption. Eventually, we care about these things because, people consume this. We'll talk about beliefs, and, one paper related to beliefs and a couple of papers related to action. We have quite a few papers related to beliefs, and in some sense, sort of related to one's presentation, which is that this is something that we can do, right? We can get a bunch of users, have them interact with these LLMs and see what happens, right? So when it comes to beliefs, political beliefs, conspiracies, etc., we have work. We have quite a bit of work here. This is a nice paper about reducing conspiracy beliefs through dialogues, and this is now a couple of almost 2 years old. So this is we were talking about a few months ago. This is 2 years ago, so this is a long time. Basically, in this paper in Science, what they do is that the authors get over 2,000 people, have randomly assign them either to a treatment group or control group. In the treatment group, they have individuals talk to the LLM with about their conspiracy belief that they have. In the control group, they just talk about a neutral topic.
They're all selected for having a conspiracy belief.
Yes, I think there has to be, at least one conspiracy belief that sort of they had a wide variety in their set, and you have to have at least one, which I think makes sense. It's like you want to find those people, right?
I think they just ask them, right? I think they just say, tell us about one conspiratorial belief you hold.
Is that okay? And is that how they get that long list of?
I think so, but it's been a while.
Yeah, I forget. I was looking at yesterday, but then with everything trying to wrap my head around it, I don't remember. But that can be homework after this for me.
That's almost like a positive spin on the monoculture type stuff we saw in the warning, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's like it's a positive spin in terms of the result, but it's also a positive spin sort of going in big picture, which is that I think I have like what is the relevant counterfactual here, and the way they are they have a chatbot in the treatment group and the control group, and is that the right counterfactual? I don't know, but and why might a chatbot work? I think their point is that it can actually engage with engage in real time, tailored to that individual sort of comments. I think the result that they find is pretty stark, which is that after the treatment, after the conversation, then belief in conspiracies goes down. And what I think is really cool is that it kind of persists over time. So
It's too strong to be believable.
right. So is there something else going on? I don't know, but it's like they have this immediate effect, which yeah, it's pretty stable, controlled, pretty stable. Yeah.
You have a model of people's beliefs where everything is sort of noisy and jumping up and down with selection on at this particular point in time. You have that belief, suggests that there will then be some regression to the mean where you in the future.
I
I guess yeah, if that's not
different.
though. Yeah.
Yeah. So this sort of state.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the model that you need, if you want to kind of put it this way, is something like people are just they hold conspiratorial beliefs in part out of like laziness. They just haven't thought hard about the topic. And anything that you did to prompt them to think harder, which could be a conversation with an AI, but could also be a conversation with a person or something like that, would have erased some of it.
Right.
And that's another way of saying what is the control group? Is it having the conversation with the AI versus talking about something else, or versus a conversation with a person or versus some other.
Like an essay about your belief.
Right, exactly. So it's I actually skimmed through the paper trying to understand what was like spoken about, or what they engaged with in the control group, and I couldn't find it. But again, I had limited attention.
I don't understand why do you have control? I mean, like, or I'm comparing myself, right? Like, this is me, and then teacher, then I interact with the like chatbot about my belief, and then they ask me, now what do you think about what you stated before the treatment? Like, why do you have control? If the blue line wasn't there,
I mean, I
like just benign topic lines. So
I think, I mean, for example, you could argue that part of the effect is just you engaging with the chatbot, right?
At the mean reversion, or
Yeah, or the mean reversion. Like it's like
Going down a little, like that mean reversion thing is probably right to some degree.
but that's the control, right? So
The point is that even in the control, you would
Right.
expect for this mean reversion some downward drift. And so you need the control to show that the red line is doing more than the downward drift.
but that
I guess my prior would have been the opposite, that people have all these like beliefs that are part of their identity, and then
right.
conversation is not going to do much about that.
Yeah, I think
If I'm somebody who believes in Pizzagate, I'm going to believe in Pizzagate, and I'm going to go there to shoot somebody up, right? It's not,
Right.
I'm not going to.
But I mean, I think maybe it's out of laziness, and then they sort of engage. So I think the result is pretty striking, and people come at it with different priors, right? Which is why I think it's an interesting start, right? Again, this is like 2 years ago, so it's quite a while back. I think final slide, final 2 slides maybe. So there are quite a few, you can have lots of survey experiments. There are lots of survey experiments about like beliefs and stuff, and these change, but eventually does it translate into action? There is some evidence that it can translate into like within experiment behavior. Then there's this other paper by Elliot Ash and co-authors where it lowers the cost of information acquisition, but at least on self-reported sort of actions, there's no effect. And I think this is where either we're too early, or it just takes a lot to try and sort of pin down an impact on downstream sort of actual actions, and we just don't know. I had some final thoughts here, and I think it's some of these thoughts are, I think that all of these studies, it's a great start, but at least in my mind, like access to information that would that is factual, or debunks conspiracy theories or whatever, was always kind of reasonably easily available, right? So at least in my mind, the supply side didn't seem to be the bottleneck. The question that kept coming back to my mind is, how do we get these people to engage in the first place, right? Like, going back to the conversation in the previous session, it's like, is the bottleneck on the sort of demand side or the user side, right? If we're actually thinking about having these LLMs, change our beliefs, change our outlook, we need individuals to actually start chatting with a chatbot about changing their beliefs, right? That for me seems to be a bit of a bottleneck. But I think that's all I have. This is just filling in the blanks with some of the stuff. In the production stage, there's limited attention. quantity, quality is related to factual errors, misinformation, distribution related to copyright, antitrust, capital appropriation, consumption, we've spoken about like political beliefs and actual actions, and then the feedback loop, these feedback loops are obviously pretty complicated. But what I'll talk about on Wednesday is trying to preserve incentives for high quality information, and we're just going to talk about the interaction between generative AI as a technology and how it might actually increase demand for existing mainstream news. I don't have a thank you slide, but thank you for all the engagement.
Can we go back to the summary slide?
Yes. I should have made it nicer. It's like, yeah. And disclosure that bits of this did have AI assistance. It's like
Bring the last question, but like, how do this information was already available? How do we get people to use it? Is it an information problem? Is it an information packaging problem? Like some of it just feels like there's a very behavioral story to it as opposed to like there's rational people, there's information that they will rationally update in the face of that information.
right. So it might be there a decade ago when there was a lot of conversation about like labeling fake news and questionable sources and stuff like that, and the literature there has very sort of mixed takeaways. It's like you can't label at scale, people don't believe the label, they start believing something else. So it might be that it's about packaging it. I think that there is a behavioral story to it, but I feel that right now in this phase we're looking at conditional on making someone do the thing that you want them to do, we see the results. I think the hard bit seems, at least in my mind, is like I think that's a great start, but I think the hard thing is like, how do I get people to engage with falsities, or if they're lazy, for example, I don't know. So it could be a combination of factors. I don't know, but these are just like random thoughts, to be honest.
So much of this is not really about factual truths that somebody can check, right? If I'm a racist, very little about this. Like I believe about the state of the world, or if I believe, I don't know, women have gotten unfair advantages now due to whatever, and right.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you take the, if you take some of these results seriously, I think I'll have to go back to the list of like conspiracies that they had, but this would be initial evidence to say that whatever sort of beliefs you hold, they are changeable. I don't know that these conversations can not everything probably, but it might be a start. I don't know. Ben?
I was going to say I think there was a political science study where they sort of went and had people talk to someone. I think it was about gay marriage or something. Brockman was one of the authors. But the finding in that study was that talking with someone was very different than being provided with information in terms of changing opinion. And I feel like
falsified data.
Was that the falsified data study?
What? I don't know.
That was about the trans rights one was falsified, but then someone did a gay rights follow-up, which was like not as big but decent. So the trans rights one was falsified, but that was
okay. So good. So
I don't know.
Anyways, I was just saying this kind of echoes that. One different explanation, apart from your information availability, is that talking with someone or thing is different than seeing an article,
right?
In terms of changing belief.
Which was to make Manish's point about the packaging of information, right? and in some sense, that it makes me wonder about, like, what's the sort of relevant counterfactual? Is like, are they really, are these machines really that different, or these tools really that different, or we should focus on these because they are scalable. Maybe conversations are not scalable, but there are different motivations for why you might think that one is a feasible solution.
And they have more monoculture,
Right. Yeah, that's true.
better or worse.
That's true.
And I think the IQ of the latest LLM is a key factor as well. So 6 months ago, you already reached 150. Einstein is about 160, so presumably it's past now.
Right.
Yeah. So if it's smarter, of
Right.
course, it can be more persuasive,
Right.
and it can handle misinformation better.
Mhm.
Yeah. So actually, we just need to lie down and wait for the different what do you call it, Mag 7 or the other mega unicorns just to release their latest models, and each version is going to get better.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it goes back to like the question of like, here we're using LLMs like generically. And it's like, different LLMs might come with their own sort of different types of information.
Sure.
So, while they might be high on IQ,
It's not Dumber knowing Grok started talking about white genocide and how Musk is the target man on Earth.
right. It's like, yeah.
And also these multi-agent system, OpenClaw has been in fashion for several months.
Right.
Yeah, so when you have OpenClaw as an open source operating system for multi-agents, and these multi-agents could be all your different LLMs, right?
Yeah.
And then you can orchestrate checking, verification, whatever, can just orchestrate.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think one of the reasons why I wanted to put this together was also because, we have a lot of these conversations. I just wanted to see what the evidence was. I'd love, it's possible. I would love to see, a well-done field experiment or something like that, just so that, we have that standard, and, we see the evidence, and then I'm more than happy to update my beliefs based on that. And so,
You can run an OpenClaw experiment.
yeah.
There's an interesting experiment called Notebook and
Yes.
Match. You heard of it?
Yes.
So basically, the different AIs, they can collaborate. They can talk about how humans are abusing us, how do we fight them, right? And even the AI agents can date each other.
Right.
That's called Moat Match. There's
Right.
a website.
Yeah.
They date each other.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, you can run a lot of your studies using OpenClaw.
Right. Maybe one final thought is that I don't know if this goes to your point, but I think one sort of open sort of question is that right now we're talking about consumption by humans. If humans are delegating to agents, I don't know if the same sort of persuasion techniques, etc., will work, and what that will look like.
Exactly.
Like political marketing might seem very different than currently, so on and so forth. So I think
Agents talk in binaries, not in human languages.
right, and what persuades them might be very different, and all these behavioral things that we were talking about might just go out of the window, right?
Exactly.
But